Welcome to Module 15, Strategic Scheduling for Educational Leaders as part of 641, School District Operations and Leadership. Hello again, this is Chris Sadler, Director of Human Resources for the Sun Prairie Area School District. Again, I've introduced other slideshows, so I won't go over my past here. You kind of know it, and I left some of the notes up there. But this slideshow is really important because educational philosophy is really about what you believe as a leader and how it plays out in your everyday work. And this quote by John F. Kennedy always kind of sits in the top of my head is that children are the world's most valuable resource and its best hope for the future. And that's really the baseline for my why, is that the kids we work with are truly going to carry our country, our communities forward. And that's why I place so much importance on being an educational leader. And that's why a lot of educational leaders do what we do. So the first place we're going to start is prioritizing time management. So one thing I wanted to talk about with this presentation this week is that it's going to kind of jump from the text that you've been reading with leveraged leadership and the other pieces that you've been doing, both reading and learning throughout this semester. But like I said, the first thing I'm going to start talking about is actually prioritizing time management. The one thing that you have to understand, especially as an administrator, but anywhere in education, is you actually do have control of your calendar if you want it. A lot of the times what we end up struggling with is keeping to a calendar. Typically, we want to say it's because the outside world is so busy, and partly that's true. I mean, there's things you can't control that starts putting things on your calendar that takes you off the focus of being strategic. But you can find the time. A lot of the times, the things that we struggle with is saying no to certain things. And if you don't say no, your calendar will start controlling you. And you'll start seeing calendar appointments on there, and you'll start recognizing things that don't really align with what you know can help you be successful as a leader, and then helping school be successful as a whole. So intentional planning is the key to effectiveness. Putting things actually on your calendar is really important, no matter if it's even as simple as email work time. Because if you don't put things like that on there, they won't get done. Things will get in the way. Something else will take its place. And then you'll be sitting at the end of the week wondering where the week went, and you still have a ton of work to do over the weekend. And later on, we'll talk a little bit about recognizing the importance of keeping time for yourself, because if you don't, you're not fresh. So you have to be very intentional in your planning, so you do have that fresh viewpoint when you come up to different work that you have to do throughout the week. So the questions that that is an important question is, what do you need to manage, and what can you delegate with supervision? And that's the key to controlling your calendar. Is really the idea is like, what are the things that you know you personally have to facilitate and lead in order to have it be successful? And then what are the things that you can delegate with supervision? When I say supervision, that doesn't mean you have to be there. It just means you're working with whoever you're delegating that work to and showing them, hey, this is what we need to get out of whatever the discussion is or whatever the work is. And then check in with them. You do want to delegate and build leadership in others, and you also want to make sure that you're kept in the loop, but not always overlooking the person's shoulder. So it's a nice dance between, this is something I have to do, so I'm going to take the lead on that and help other people move through it. Here's something that I can delegate to one of my teacher leaders, to my assistant principal, to my assistant superintendent, whatever it might be, to my administrative associate or secretary that can help me get this done. What are those things that you can have somebody else do while you're supervising and understanding what they're doing? These are some simple things that I like to think about is when you're putting things on your calendar, always add buffer time, even if you have to specifically place it there. What I mean by that is that you might have a meeting from 10 to 11, and when it ends at 11, all of a sudden you have another meeting right at 11. Even in our Zoom world right now, to go from one meeting at 11 and start the next meeting at 11, we all know that becomes a rat race. And all of a sudden, again, you get there at 7:30 and all of a sudden it's 5 and your day is done and you didn't get anything done as far as like email or work. You just went from meeting to meeting. you need to be able to take breathers in between, or at least prepare for the next one mentally, or if you have to prepare agendas or get things ready for people. Because if you go back to back, you're going to feel really exhausted by the end of the day, week, or month. But you're also going to run out of time to actually sit down and be thoughtful about the things you need to do. And what I say there is Google Calendar is great because you can share calendars, you can place things on other people's calendars. But one of the traps is that if you leave open space, more often than not, somebody is going to schedule something during your open time. So if you feel like you need 15 minutes between one meeting and the next, put it in there. 15 minutes between meetings. Just title it that, because at least that blocks that off in your calendar so somebody's not to schedule over that. Now, we all know there's people that still schedule things over it, but most people will look at your calendar and see that that's blocked off, and they will not schedule over it. So some things that to think about is prioritize work time in your calendar. Put it down, even if you're not including anybody else, but you're saying, I need to work on budget 2021 or 21-22 for these 3 hours or whatever it might be, or 2 hours. Schedule in communication time, because a lot of the times we will check email sporadically throughout the day, but what ends up happening is you get into that email and it just sucks you in, and what you meant to just return one email, all of a sudden you're returning 10, 12, and reading others. Schedule it in and say, I am not going to check my email from 9 to 12. At 12 to 12:30, that's when I'm going to do it. And whatever I get done in that time, great. And right at 12:30, I am stopping. So prioritize that communication, not just through email, but for like phone calls, conversations that you know you need to have. Put them in there. Put professional development time in, even if it's just reading that article that you've been meaning to read for years. Put it in, because if you don't, it'll continue to be pushed off to the side, because you'll, most often than not, the thing that's right in front of our face will become the priority, and you'll forget about all those things. And we know those things are important to our long-term development as leaders and also to the success of the school. Prioritize face time. What I mean by that is getting out and about, which we'll talk about visibility in a little bit, but schedule it. Just say, I will be in third grade from 1 to 1:30, and put it in there. Schedule in feedback. So if you are providing feedback through observations, evaluations, or just informal observations, put it into your calendar. Whatever it is your priority, it has to be in your calendar, because if it is not in your calendar, that doesn't mean it's a priority. I did a little section on email. Email is one of those things that if you let it get away on you, people will look at you and act like you don't care, even though we know our time is busy and we can't get to it right away. So you have to be able to manage it in a way that it doesn't control your life, but you respond to the people that need communication. So organizing your email is really important. Organize it into folders, because a lot of the times we get really, a little hesitant on always deleting emails, which is fine because you think that at some point you might need it again. But don't just let it sit in your inbox, because then you're going to start searching for the subject word, the person who you thought wrote it, the title of it that you thought it was, and you're going to take time searching for it. So create folders as you go. If it has to do with budget, schedule, parent emails, board member emails, whatever it might be. If you can organize in the folders, when you're looking for that email that it was really important that you needed to know, you can find it relatively easy if you remember just the concept line it was behind. If it was, school board email, you can go right to that folder. One thing that I have found myself that works really well is there's a filter. You can look it up on Gmail if you want to figure out how to do it, but you can filter emails that are coming in. I filter mine between external email addresses and internal. For a time there, I had all emails going to my inbox without a filter, and it's overwhelming when all of a sudden you thought you had your email under control, and all of a sudden you look at it 4 hours later and there's 100 emails. Well, when you really look at it, out of those 100 emails, 75 of them might have been external emails that were somebody looking to sell something, looking to partner, whatever it might be. A lot of those emails are not needed. And what I always say is I want to make sure that I am connecting with my internal customers more than my external. And that means my internal customers are my students, my staff, and the people and my colleagues. I look at the external filter all the time because it just kicks it right into an extra folder called external. Because also I'm obviously working with people that are outside our organization that don't have our school's email address, but um, that way I can prioritize just my email between internal and external. And it does, when I look at my internal email now and it's instead of 100, it's 25, it just brings a sense of calm to me. A couple other things is, send later. There's a lot of great systems that you can put in place. I know Gmail has something called Boomerang, but you can get these different add-ons to your email server that you can say, I don't want to send this email now, because what will happen is there might be an email you have to send that's challenging and you're going to get a lot of responses back. But if you send it at 9 a.m. and then all those responses come that day, you feel like you got to stay later to do that, which I get. But a lot of the times you can time them well, so when they go out. If it goes out after you're gone, at least you can come back fresh the next day and say, yep, I know this is going to help overnight, but it won't catch me in my work day right now. And then you can come in there with that attitude of like, I'm going to read these and I'm going to respond. The other thing too is with email to remember is just be really careful with unintended communication of work expectations. This is something that I always have to pay attention to, and I am not perfect by any means, but I think school leaders need to look at when they send emails, because people pay attention to it. So let's say you're a superintendent and you're writing emails to your assistant superintendents, principals, whoever it might be that you're working with or working for, and you start sending them at like 10:30 at night, 11 at night, midnight. They read that and see like, oh my gosh, he or she is working at midnight. Maybe I should be doing that. And it puts this like kind of undue stress on other people. And actually, you shouldn't be emailing after 11 o'clock at night anyways. But what happens is if you send emails during that time, it sends this message to the people you work with that they should be doing the same. And nobody means that at all, but that's how it can come across. So that's where that send later part can work. So let's say you did have like a long day and your emails are crazy out of control and you feel like you've got to stay up a little later to get back on top of them. That's fine, but try to find a system that allows you to send them maybe at 7 a.m. the next day or 7:30. So it still gets to the person before they get to work, but it doesn't look like it was sent to them at midnight. It's just one of those things to pay attention to. So a couple learnings from leverage leadership that I want you to pay attention to is like, who is your offensive line? So who are the people that protect you from, things that could suck your time? And that, we all know that our admin associates and secretaries are hugely important people to your work, because a lot of the times people go to them first before they go to you. So making sure that you have those people that surround you that can be your offensive line that you can either delegate things to or people go to before they go to you, so you can still focus on your leadership work. Less is more, focused work. Very easy to get scattered. There's so many things flying at school leaders that it's very simple to get off the path of what your main goal is. So pick a small number of projects each day, each week, each month. Those are your focus areas. And then understand that the typical ebb and flow of the day and schedule around it. If you know that if you're a principal and you have more behavior things that might come your way, or a certain busy part of the day around recess, whatever it might be, don't schedule meetings during that time, because that helps you avoid, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to schedule emails to people, reschedule emails to people, because if you know you're going to be busy that time, try to keep your meetings light. Give yourself time, day versus week. What I mean by that is every day, give yourself a couple minutes, or give yourself some time in the week where you have a chunk of time that you're just focusing on something you want to get done and something that engages you and excites you to get it done. We all have those tasks that we know that we don't truly enjoy but are just part of the job, and we got to get those done. But don't forget to have fun in your day and week. Schedule times in on those things that really are your purpose in why you're doing what you're doing. Delegate strategically, like the book says, and we all know. You have trusted people that want the responsibility and want to grow. If you hold that back from them, they feel like you don't trust them. And then, but you're probably doing it thinking, I don't want to put more on them, when they are wanting it, because they want to grow themselves. So don't forget to do that. Delegate strategically. If somebody has a strength in a certain area that you have to get some type of work or project done in, work with them. They're going to want to help. And then one other piece from the book that I wanted to point out was use the DVDs that are in the back. There are really nice scheduling templates in it. I always make this fun of this book a little bit, just because, DVDs are starting to become very old technology. So a lot of books now are all online. This one still uses the DVD, and maybe it'll transition to online at some point. But the DVD does have great resources in it and great templates for a lot of different things, and scheduling is one of them. So I talked about before, being visible is very important. And you might wonder, like, why is Chris talking about this when he's talking about scheduling? Because being visible, purposely visible, can actually help in your scheduling amazingly well. So why would you want to be visible in your job? Like getting out to school buildings, getting to classrooms, getting out in the community, because stakeholders see you as a real person. This actually cuts down on time, because when they see you out, they trust you. They won't send those emails that in a way that it makes it seem like they don't know who you are or what you do, because they're going to meet you and talk to you right there. And they're going to see you as a real person and trust you. You're going to get a better understanding of what is happening. So when you are scheduling and planning, you're going to see, oh my gosh, I thought this was happening, but it's not. What do I need to schedule to make this better in my school or my district? Or you get out there and you think, oh my gosh, we're actually doing this really well. Maybe we don't have to, that should not be a priority area. Another area should be. So it really helps you to see if your strategies are actually playing out the way you intended. The other thing that I've found with being purposely visible is it actually is a time saver. It cuts down on emails, because you have on-the-spot problem solving. People will walk up to you right then and there and say, oh my gosh, I have this going on. And you answer right there and you're off on your way. And that just saved you an email. It also helps with evaluation and feedback, because a lot of times if you're just focusing on saying, I'm going to be in that classroom from 12 to 12:30, that's great. And you need to schedule that. But sometimes when you're just being purposely visible and walking around the school, you get feedback right there, because there's this big misnomer out there that every observation is what creates an evaluation and feedback. It's not. It's those informal times that you interact with your staff. So if you walk into a classroom, not meaning it to be like a full evaluation observation, but it's just a 5 or 10 minute pop in, you get a great sense of that classroom, much more than if you just went in there twice a year for an hour. So again, being purposely visible can actually cut down on a lot of things that you would do anyways. It also keeps you fit. So a simple way is it gets your steps in. Sitting in a chair, there are times when I know we need to do that for long periods of time, depending on what we're doing. But getting up and moving will actually save you time in the long run, because it'll keep you energized and ready to go. How do you do it? Scheduled in. There are times when you can just say, oh my gosh, I have 15 minutes right now, I'm going to walk. That's great. But schedule it in, because if you don't, and say visibility time or whatever you want to title it, it will not happen, because it won't be a priority. So you may have to just write it in your calendar. And then talk about that with your staff. Why do you do it? So communicate to your staff the purposefulness in being visible around the building and district. They want to see you out, and you want to tell them that you will be and why you want to do it, because you want to connect with them, or you want to connect with students, or you want to connect with parents. The reason you're out and about is because you actually want to be a better leader for them. You're not checking up on people. I mean, yes, sometimes it might happen, but for the most part, your main reason for being out there is to understand what is going on and better support the people you work for. So a couple things from the field. These are things that I've learned, and I actually talked with a lot of leaders prior to this just to kind of get some sense that this would make sense to you. So you must be able to delegate. You can't do it all. I've said it a few times. Build leadership on others so that your voice is there even when you're not. So in meetings, if other people can carry the torch of the strategies you're trying to make sure are followed through on, your voice is everywhere then, and you don't have to be everywhere. Sleep is really important. Having worked more hours than others does not get you a prize. This is something that can be actually really cancerous to an organization, is that if there's this like badge of honor for somebody that works more hours, it can actually turn into a very difficult work situation where people are exhausted and they are not fresh and the ideas are not coming to your discussions because people are so exhausted and just burnt out. So you have to be careful of that, and you have to definitely be careful with yourself. So get your rest, get your exercise, get your sleep, especially. It refreshes you to be ready. Saying no, even to your supervisor, is a very important piece, and it creates freedom. You cannot do everything. There are going to be times where you say no. It doesn't feel good because you feel like you're disappointing somebody or letting them down. But a lot of the times, if you have a reason and say, no, I can't do this because my other priority is this, people understand, including your supervisor. If you say, no, I understand you want me to work on that handbook language, but right now I need to meet with this team because they are working on our math scores or whatever it might be that's a higher priority based on your strategies. Always ask to yourself, does what I am doing right now lead to the long-term goals we have as school or as a district, and how is this helping kids? Because if you can answer those questions clearly, it will give you the direction on what you should be doing at that moment. And then recognize when a conversation is off course and practice ways to get it back on course. It's almost like saying no to your supervisor. When do you have those conversations that you're out and about and being visible and you have it in your schedule and you think everything's good and somebody sidetracks that with a conversation that has nothing to do with what you're trying to get done? How do you turn that around? Sometimes it is just recognizing and saying, hey, I appreciate you talking about that, but right now we are talking about this. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Other times it might be pulling that person aside if it's a consistent pattern that they have. Hey, you know what? We've got these strategies here. I understand you have concerns about other areas, and I do too, and I want to work on those. However, our priorities are here, and right now we've got to focus on this. So just a couple other pieces. Meetings. Boy, oh boy. During Zoom and during our days, meetings can become a very difficult word to hear. So, as a leader, there are many things to pay attention to in meetings, but you want them to be purposeful and effective. So, a couple things that I've read and things that I know many of you have been a part of, either in a negative or positive way. If at all possible, try to schedule meetings that don't last more than an hour. If it needs to last more than an hour, give everyone a break and be very thoughtful about it. A lot of the times, if you say into an hour into a meeting, if you're the leader or a supervisor and you say, hey, does anybody need a break? There's a lot of people that are like, should I tell my supervisor I need a break? And they'll say no. You just make it. Just say, you know what, we're 50 minutes in this meeting. I thought it would be done an hour. It's not going to be. So guess what? Let's take 10 minutes, stretch, walk, go to the bathroom, get a drink, get a snack, whatever you need to do, and we'll come back and hopefully we'll be ready to go again. The one thing that I've found, and all of us have been in education long enough, that if you're a teacher and you do the same topic for an hour, no matter if you're an adult learner or a younger learner, an hour is a long time, and it's really hard to focus and be effective during that time. So you either need to get breaks or really make sure you're limiting things to an hour and keep to that agenda tight. One thing that I've always been thoughtful about is like, how big does a meeting need to be with people? So if it's focused on a decision, you really should not have more people than can equal share a large pizza. This is a rule that Google uses at times. Is you just have to think like if we're going to make a big decision here, if we have 40 people all giving feedback, that decision is never going to be made. So who are the most influential, the most strategic people you need to be at a meeting that's going to make a decision so that decision can be clear and not muddied up by too many perspectives, even though you need perspectives, but you need the people that to bring those in that are part of that group that's making the decision. There is an interesting article that I've linked. It shows that research shows that one person usually leaves a meeting feeling good about it, and it's the leader of that meeting. And what that is very important to think about is you go in there with your agenda and the goal that you want. You need to ask people. So during this meeting, this was what I heard. This was the decision I think we made. How are people feeling about that? Now, people might not give their feedback right away in verbal, but give them as many chances as possible, even if it's an email that's a little more anonymous or after the fact so people have time to think about it. Just make sure that other people see your meetings as purposeful and effective as well. And again, this article is kind of it's humorous, but it's very true too about how to look at meetings. Now, one thing that you can do that I would highly recommend is build an annual calendar of routine leadership activities. There is no right way to do this, but find out what works for you. And again, use the DVDs that are in there. There's good ideas. When I say an annual like calendar of routine activities, I did some examples there. Like in July, what are you usually doing? Okay, so you're planning. You took data from last year. Now you're planning forward to the next year. In August, you're working on communicating to staff and parents. In September, you have opening year activities depending on what role you're playing. In January through February, you're looking at budget. March through May, hiring and non-renewal works. June, you're closing out strategic planning. Now, obviously, there's a million other things that happen in those times, but those are just some examples. In these links that are here, you have a principal example, a superintendent example. You have DPI who has assessment calendars and finance calendars. All of those can actually help you a ton in understanding the role you step into. What is the ebb and the flow throughout the year? What are the normal things that happen in certain times of the year that you can anticipate and be ready for so nothing is coming as a surprise? Because you're going to have plenty of other surprises in your jobs as educational leaders that you at least want to have that routine calendar in front of you to know what's happening and to make sure you complete the things that are needed as well. The two that are there, the principal schedule and the superintendent entry plan with calendar, yes, those are specifically written for a principal or superintendent, but I think if you're a director of special education, director of instruction, business manager, whatever it might be, you can look at those and they still give you the sense of what is expected as far as like when you're doing a routine calendar. Okay, a couple other things just to remember is with all the strategic planning and calendaring and all of that, calendar times to celebrate. There are so many good things that happen every day that sometimes we don't always recognize. So celebrate and recognize people because that is just as purposeful and strategic as any other action. Be humble as a leader, but definitely recognize others. But also don't forget you are leading the work. The work is never done, so you do need to take time to recognize how your actions are leading to improvement. This work that you do in educational leadership or anything in education, it's always ongoing. That's why continuous improvement is so relevant to education. The problem with continuous improvement is you feel like you're never done. It can be really frustrating because no matter how much you improve, there's always something to do better. So recognize and celebrate even with yourself at times to make sure that you understand that you had something to do that. So you feel like, yes, my work is making a difference. Have fun during the way. Pick a 1 day a week where you don't touch work stuff. This helps you, again, be fresh, recognize, and reflect on the good things you're doing. Connect with those doing a similar job inside and outside your school district. So this can sometimes feel like you're trying to be a one up person, but it really isn't meant to be that way. Connect with people that do your work, that can understand the trials and tribulations you go through, both inside your district, and I love working with people outside your district because one is it gives you ideas on how to improve, because somebody inherently is always doing something better than what you're doing, and it's something that's usually really basic you just didn't think about. So that will help you improve yourself and feel good about the work you're doing. But it also shows sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one who was struggling with this. Other people are too. And that actually helps you reflect and say, okay, I thought I was way behind the curve. I'm not, and maybe I'm even ahead of it. Um, so I'm doing good. I need to get better, yes, but I am doing good. And being able to connect outside the borders of your district is important because you have to have that bigger perspective. Otherwise, you can get very caught up in the internals. Pause and reflect more than just on milestone dates. So don't just look at the data in the quarter and semester part of the year or the end of the year. Think about from a week-to-week perspective. It does not always have to be quantitative data that you're saying, we're celebrating. It can be qualitative. Oh my gosh, I've been into 5 classrooms today, and the questioning that was going on was amazing, and kids were responding and discussing things at such deep levels. Communicate the successes outside of your school district building with a focus on building pride in your community. Too many times, the way the world works right now is negative news dominates. People need to hear the good things that are going on. They need to understand that, yes, things are not perfect. They never will be. But there are some really good people doing really good work with kids. And no matter what role you play, you can do that. No matter if it's business, superintendent, principal, director level, whatever it might be, find the good things and communicate it out as much as you can to as many stakeholders as possible. You are making your own good news. So the link I have in there has nothing to do with education, but I'm finding more and more news sources that are trying to just focus on good news. So like the Today Show and the Huffington Post, pretty much every major news channel provides a link in their website that goes to just good news. So this one here is Today Good News, and literally the stories are only about good things that people are doing for each other or for the world, and it's really uplifting. So make that work for your district, and all of your work around strategies and calendaring will actually get easier. That's the reason I put this slide in here, is because a lot of the times when we think about calendar work and being effective and efficient with your time, it's not just about putting things down on paper, which is a big part, but being able to share good news actually saves you time in the long run, because the more you build trust through that, the less emails you get, the less board meetings you have where somebody shows up unannounced and takes up the time with a question that is pointed or critical, because if they trust you, they come at it from a different angle and actually save you time. So just some useful links concerning time management. These are some just really basic and logistical pieces that you can check out. So I put 3 links there. They'll be in resources. And I also have just a link to Educational Leadership Magazine. They had a whole issue focused on time well managed. It doesn't just talk about managing your day-to-day, but just managing things in general. And it's a good resource. Thank you for your time. I hope you appreciated and enjoyed this week's module. If you have any questions, just private chat your instructor or myself, or you can send an email. Thanks.